They were on your
Gathered as one, we seek to be at one with this earth that we share, living the seasons and cycles, embracing the change and celebrating the turning. At one with the world beyond these walls, telling the truth about what is, envisioning and working toward a future that is better. At one with this community of care, checking on one another, supporting and encouraging each other on the journey. At one with our family and friends, sharing our laughter and our tears, giving of ourselves, and saying, I love you without reservation. At one with ourselves, exploring our inner worlds, making meaning and joy of the lives we are given. And at one with the mystery beyond, letting go of the illusion of control, seeking truths and understanding that there are things beyond our knowing. Gathered as one, we seek to be at one, moving day by day, doing the best we can, beginning and beginning again and beginning again together. Welcome here to this time and to this place. This fall, we're trying something new. Each Sunday, we're going to be hearing from one of you. As we come back together again in the fullest way since the winter of 2020, we are reminding ourselves who we are as this community, why we're here. We're reminding ourselves what the heart of this place is as we share our hearts with one another. So Judd is going first. Thank you, Judd.
This was my idea, so that's why I'm going first. So not as an expert, just as a member, sharing my experience, who I am, why I'm here. My name's Judd Seals. I've been a member here for about 13 years. Currently serving with Reverend Sarah on the Committee on Shared Ministry. That's where we had some discussions about this. I'm from Ohio, raised an atheist by parents who were recovering Southern Baptists who fled their native Texas as soon as they got out of college, moved up to Ohio. We never went to church when I was a kid, but I did go to a Unitarian preschool, so I had some sense about what UU was, a little sense. In college, I did have some interest in religion, read about different religions, and had some, just kind of academic interest in it. But later on in my college career, I got into recovery, substance abuse recovery, and there I met a lot of people who had some pretty impressive transformations. People that, when I first met them, had a real grayness, dullness in their eyes, and over a couple of years, a real light emerged, a real personality, a real life. This process seemed to be rooted in honesty, in humility, and in community. And there was a lot about it that I really liked. I even, through that period, I reluctantly gave prayer a try for the first time. I was uncomfortable with a lot of the language and the imagery, but found in doing it there was some comfort there and some effectiveness. So it kind of broadened my horizons a little bit from my upbringing. Later on, when I had a family, I was living in New Jersey. We had a pet, a dog that died, and my kids, who were young at the time, were asking me questions about that, and in trying to answer their questions, I just realized I didn't have a real good foundation. It was sort of ad-libbing it, and I didn't have a bedrock to fall back on. I hadn't really invested in those kinds of questions, and that was really the impetus. I knew about this place from friends, but that was the impetus for me to come here, was for the kids. Not for me, for the kids. We did participate as a family for a number of years. I think my wife was the first to decide that she got her needs met in other ways and didn't want to invest here. And then the kids and I came for a long time, but their activities have started to conflict. And so for the last couple of years, it's just been me coming from my family, which I really enjoyed it as a family, but it's a different thing coming as an individual. And, I find I have to really invest in this place and in my relationships with you people if I'm going to get anything out of it. And I have to kind of put some stuff in the bank so that at times when I need it, I can draw on that reserve. I've served on the nominating committee, the board. I taught in RE for several years, which I loved. I love the program here. I love the kids. I've done some men's groups and just recently started another one, participating in another one. I did the Zen group for a couple years. That meets on Monday night. And the reason I keep coming, like I said, the kids don't come anymore. It's just me. But I come because I don't want to be on my own. I don't want to be alone. And I mean that in a sense of, I know how to attend to my physical needs and my, intellectual needs. And, but there's another kind of need. I don't know that I can articulate it, but if it's spiritual or mental or psychological, but there's that other kind of need that's a little harder to do, and it's hard to do by yourself, and that's the thing where I feel like I need help, and if it's not something divine, then maybe it's a thing that's through a community. And, this has been a tough year, and it's been a tough couple of years. This year in particular has been tough, and I've just been feeling lately a little disconnected, like I need something and I'm not sure what. And I haven't been coming here in person, and coming this morning, it was really nice. I enjoy seeing the familiar faces. I really enjoy seeing the not yet familiar faces. So there's a lot of people that I haven't met yet, and I'm thrilled to see them here. The music is uplifting in a way that it's hard to describe. Thank you. And I missed the artwork, but I think that's coming back. So, and just seeing all of you, it feeds me, and I need it. So I keep coming back. So I think I've gone over my 2 or 3 minutes, but thank you all for listening.
Tonight at sundown, the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah begins. Rosh Hashanah marks the new year, and it's a joyful celebration commemorated by eating apples and honey, sometimes other sweet foods, to encourage a sweet year ahead. Rosh Hashanah also begins a 10-day stretch of time known as the Days of Awe. These days culminate in Yom Kippur, translated typically as the Day of Atonement. Yom Kippur is less celebration, more somber reflection. It's a day of fasting, a day of prayer, a day of holy observance. It's a time to be in community, at the synagogue, in relationship with God. These 10 days that stretch between are special time out of time, almost. Theologically speaking, during this time, the books of life and death are open, and God is contemplating who will be inscribed in each. God's decision determines if one will survive the next year. These 10 days then become a time for getting it right, finding that oneness with each other and with God. These liminal days, when the new year has begun but one's fate has not been sealed, are a time for repentance, atonement, restitution, forgiveness. They're a time for not just prayer to God, but action. These are holy days of human meeting that lead to a moment of holy encounter. And for Jews across denominations, Rosh Hashanah, the Days of Awe, and Yom Kippur are deeply meaningful. In spite of my own Jewish ancestry and being raised with some of the holidays, I did not experience these ones as a child. We didn't do the high holy days. We did Hanukkah and the story of freedom fighting, and Passover and the story of liberation. We didn't do the Days of Awe and the idea of repentance and repair and renewal. My multi-religious family is probably somewhat typical. It's easier to hang on to the lighter holidays that are full of narrative and aren't so full of theology. My first real encounter with this part of the Jewish liturgical year came in a class of that same name in my first year of graduate school. Not for nothing, I had long desired to connect more deeply with both the Catholic and Jewish parts of my heritage and family. My pursuits in religious studies allowed me to do that. And in this class, we moved through each of the holidays in the Jewish year, learning about customs, theology, and history. And it taught me also about the value of ritual. As a born and raised Unitarian Universalist, one who'd gotten up early on Sunday mornings throughout college to go to the nearest congregation, which was 45 minutes away, I understood on a visceral level what it means to engage in ritual behavior. But I learned it sort of from the other side, if you will, in that class. Learned about how ritual is intentionally crafted. Learned that returning year after year or week after week to the same place, among the same people, engaging in the same patterns of speech and silence can be liberating. And more importantly, perhaps it can be countercultural, helping us fight against the tides that sweep us along. This year, as part of my own preparation for these days, I read the book we heard a passage from earlier. On Repentance and Repair by Danya Ruttenberg was published actually by the Unitarian Universalist Beacon Press. Rabbi Ruttenberg says from the outset of the book that its message is the message of the High Holy Days, one that is countercultural and absolutely vital. She writes, "The challenges surrounding apologies and forgiveness, repentance and reconciliation, amends and atonement invite a lot of questions, and they're neither simple nor theoretical. And in the United States, most of the time, we've gotten them very, very wrong. To put it bluntly, American society isn't very good at doing the work of repentance and repair." She's noting here that although we have been trying as a culture to hold people accountable, that whole notion of cancel culture, yes, we have heard of this. Actually, I find it to be an absurdity. It's a culture of accountability, right? Finally coming home to roost with folks who'd rather see themselves as beyond critique. But she's recognizing this idea that we've been trying, but we haven't been set up to do it very well. And there's lots of reasons for this, of course, that have to do not only with religion, but also a legacy of colonialism and manifest destiny, that pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. I'm as much a product of it as anyone. I am a product of a pretty standard, mainstream, middle to upper class white Protestantism, a product of pretty unexamined privilege, shot through with America's cultural ethos of individualism, the myth of meritocracy, the desire to be right, and the desire to not go as deep as we humans are capable of. And I can tell you that it took a long time to unlearn those things, and still sometimes I fall short. Today, on the cusp of these days designed to consider repentance and repair, I can tell you it took time to learn how to be wrong, and to learn how to apologize, how to be called out, and most of the time not get defensive and feel ashamed. It took time to learn how to expect and encourage others to engage in the same kind of honest reflection. It took time to learn what the rituals of this time of year in Judaism have taught for millennia. Rabbi Ruttenberg sets out in this book to remind the reader that we don't actually need to reinvent the wheel. Repentance has a roadmap laid out in the 12th century by the philosopher Maimonides. As we heard in the reading, Ruttenberg wants to be sure to clarify that although we elide these terms in modern America, repentance, forgiveness, and atonement are very different. Forgiveness is done person to person, it can be done at any time, and it doesn't always happen. It's up to the individual involved. And forgiveness, though we stress it a lot in our culture, turn the other cheek and all that, forgiveness is not, in the Jewish tradition, the central thrust. Certainly, it's not Maimonides' central thrust. Rabbi Ruttenberg writes, "For the rabbis of the Mishnah and the Talmud, and for our guide Maimonides, forgiveness is much less important than the repair work that the person who caused harm is obligated to do." The Hebrew word that's often translated as repentance is shuvah, which literally means returning. In a spiritual context, Shuvah is about coming back to where we are supposed to be, returning to the person we know we're capable of being, coming home in humility and with intentionality to behave as the person we'd like to believe we are. So forgiveness can take the form of an "I'm sorry," and however sincere those words can be, if they remain at the level of only words, it isn't enough. We try to teach this to children. Saying sorry matters, but so does doing it differently the next time. What Maimonides teaches then, what he lays the roadmap for, isn't forgiveness. It isn't how to ensure someone will absolve you. He lays the roadmap for changing ourselves, for becoming the best version of us, the version we know we can be. And it's not actually that complicated, a roadmap. It's hard, but it's not complicated. And Rabbi Ruttenberg describes it in steps. The first is that we begin by acknowledging the harm we have caused. In theory, that's simple, but as we've noted, acknowledging wrongdoing and expressing clearly the feelings of guilt or shame our behavior has induced in us can be painful, but that's the first step. In a public way, assuming that is possible and warranted, the first step is to name, to own, to acknowledge the mistake we've made or the harm we've caused. Step 2 is beginning the work of change. True repentance, writes Rabbi Ruttenberg, quote, happens at the moment when a person comes into a situation similar to the one in which they had previously committed harm, and this time does it right. We might acknowledge that we've harmed, but do nothing to ensure that we won't repeat that harm. That's not enough. Maimonides says we have to take steps to be certain that when faced with the same situation, we'll behave differently. And that changing of self might be through therapy, it might be through treatment, it might be through education. Step 3 is to make actual amends and restitution, to do what we can do to repair the harm. That can look different, obviously, in any situation. If the harm was material, it might mean the restoration of goods. But it might also mean paying for someone else's therapy or using our own time to help others learn from our mistakes. Not only must the amends be identified, they must actually be done. That's the work of repair. And here Rabbi Ruttenberg says something I think is super important. Someone listen up. And it speaks to this intersection of a culture steeped in the idea that forgiveness is mandatory and of a segment of the country hand-wringing over cancel culture. She writes this: though Maimonides doesn't say this explicitly, I think part of the amends process involves also humbly accepting the fact that actions have consequences. In the case of, say, revelations of significant abuses of power by a high-profile person, part of amends might include making no attempt at a career comeback, even if it might be possible, given the public's short memory. Too often we think amends are about making it right, and that once we've done that, apologies should automatically be forgiven, and that then we can go on as we were before. But what she's saying is that true repentance, true amends might mean that we quit expecting a particular position or place in life, quit expecting that our life should continue as it did before, given the harm we've caused. The fourth step is to apologize, and it comes near the end because Maimonides argues that an apology done before you've done that other work isn't sincere. It's just words. And interpreting Maimonides, Rabbi Ruttenberg writes that apologies are not done, quote, at the person who has been hurt, but instead are given in relationship with them. A true apology requires vulnerability and empathetic listening. It demands a sincere offering of regret and sorrow. And that can only be done when those other steps have begun. Sincere expressions of regret and sorrow are only possible when we're already on the journey of repentance. And that final step is to make different choices in the future. The fifth one. The ultimate point of Maimonides' writing on this subject is transformation. It's getting to a place where we've internalized the skills and the ability to do something different, and then we do it differently. So those 5 steps: naming and owning our mistakes, beginning the process of change, making amends, apologizing, and doing better in the future. They are a path toward greater wholeness in ourselves and in the world. Rabbi Ruttenberg writes this: "We can never undo what we have done. We can never go back in time. We write history with our decisions and our actions, but we also write history with our responses to those actions. We can leave the pain and the damage in our wake unattended, or we can do the work of acknowledging and fixing, to whatever extent possible, the harm that we have caused." She goes on, "Repentance, shuva, is like the Japanese art of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. You can never unbreak what you have broken. But with the sincere and deep work of transformation, acts of repair have the potential to make something new." I love that passage. We can make something new. It doesn't have to stay in the place of guilt and shame. We don't have to stay there. When we've harmed, as we certainly will do across the course of a lifetime, we can do the work of repentance and restoration. I've shared with you all before this format for apologizing that I learned some years ago, and that to varying degrees on any given day, I insist my children and I use. That format goes like this: "I'm sorry for doing X. It was wrong because, ... I promise to try not to do X again. Can I do anything to help you feel better now? I'm sorry, and I hope in time you'll forgive me." It's a long form of apology, but it bears some similarity to Maimonides' steps. I realized that while I was reading the book. It wasn't taught to me as derived from Maimonides, but there it is. Of course, that model is designed more for children and the slightly more minor harms they routinely cause each other. But both include an all-important repair question. Both include an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Both include the truth that we can't actually control if someone else will forgive us. Both include a determination to behave differently in the future. When we offer flippant sorries, when we don't engage in the deep work of understanding how harm and repair are relational, we diminish ourselves and the people that we harm. The work of repentance and repair is about the care and safety of a victim, but it is also about all of our wholeness. Guy and I were discussing these days of awe, these holy days of time out of time. They begin with joyful celebration, and they involve introspection and repentance, and they culminate in solemn prayer. There's a juxtaposition there, one that stands in pretty stark contrast to the rhythms we are used to in our Western American stories. Hardship leads to celebration, not celebration leads to difficult internal work and challenging relational work. We tend to like our stories to arc upward, right? The thing is, on its face, it might seem like a downward arc, but that's only if you stay on the surface level. If we understand the work of repentance, done when the books of life and death are open, as the work of wholeness, then our desired upward arc is there. The year begins and we long for sweetness, but we know that to find it, to create it, to partake in it, we have to be honest and we have to turn our hearts. Bring a new heart to the new year, turning ourselves with the season into the person we want to be. And these steps Maimonides advises are not, Rabbi Ruttenberg says throughout the book, useful only to Jewish folks who participate in the yearly services of the High Holy Days. These steps can benefit us all, change our culture, shift our understandings of accountability and apology and repair. I think she's right, and you should definitely go read her book. And my long ago class on the Jewish liturgical year and my own experiences of the value of ritual remind me that institutionalized opportunities to renew our promises to ourselves and to chart the path forward to who we want to be, those opportunities matter. The days of repentance end in collective prayer, collective apology and recommitment. Using we, a congregation stands before each other and before their vision of God to make apology after taking time and reflection and renewal. We did this, and we feel guilt and shame and sorrow for what we've done. That's the pronoun that gets used. We did this and we want to do better. We did this and we are committed to turning our lives and our hearts. Every year, an opportunity to say, we did this. Every year, an opportunity for change. Every year, a ritual that can absolutely alter a life. Every year, an acknowledgement that honesty leads to wholeness and wholeness to joy. Every year, a deepened appreciation for all the ways we exist in inescapable relationship to others. Every year, a chance to remember our flawed and powerful humanness. Every year, the possibility of creating something new and beautiful. The Reform Rabbi Chaim Stern wrote these words about this time of year. Once more, Atonement Day has come, all pretense gone, naked heart revealed to the hiding self. We stand on holy ground, between the day that was and the one that must be. We tremble. At what did we aim? How did we stumble? What did we take? What did we give? To what were we blind? Last year's confession came easily to the lips. Will this year's come from deeper than the skin? Say then, why are our paths strewn with promises like fallen leaves? Say then, when shall our lust be for wisdom? Say now, love and truth shall meet, justice and peace shall embrace. A confession that comes from deeper than the skin, from a heart that is already turning. That's the call, that's the hope. That with the words we speak, we begin to take steps on the journey of repentance and repair. This month in our services, we have asked why Unitarian Universalism matters in this moment, what we even are. Our answers have been varied. We are a religion that invites in all welcoming questions and the seekers who ask them. We are an intentionally multi-generational community working against the divisions that keep us apart in our lives. We are a congregation that cares for one another, practicing for what is needed in the outside world. We are a people who look at the world as it is and do our best to make it better. We are also people who can remember the value of consistent presence and of ritualized opportunities for wholeness. May we take those opportunities whenever we can to bear witness to each other's lives and to create for each other more joy, more unity, more wholeness, more holiness. Go in peace.